We are here today to talk to Kelly Kugler for a mid-year check-in. Now, Kelly is a career manager, a relocation coach, and global talent acquisition and recruiting leader. Now, she's the founder of Allora Collective, which is a team of coaches that helps people to navigate the job search process, their career pivots, as well as relocations. Now, she helps her clients to make career changes and relocations as seamless as possible. Now, Kelly developed scalable talent acquisition programs and created job search programs for Booking.com, the NFL, as well as General Assembly. Now, she works with teams to improve their hiring programs and the quality of the experience for both candidates and recruiters. Now, Kelly is a frequent flyer at Power to Fly and one of my favorite people to get to host, especially recurringly. Kelly, is there anything else that you think our audience should know about you before we dive into questions today?
Thank you, Meg. It's so nice to be here. I think you may have done my very first Chat and Learn, which was back in December 2019, when I took the first big loop. It was I think my third time wanting to do my own thing. But I basically took all the bits of recruitment and the operational constraints that drove me crazy, and I tried to find a way to do the things I really loved, which was to help individuals. And when we did that very first event, I remember it had too long of a title. I wasn't really sure what I was trying to do, but the way that we were able to connect with everybody and help everybody in the live chat and then with the comments after, it stuck. I don't know, we've definitely done over 20 of these so far. It's so nice to see you again. It's lovely to see everybody that's joined us today and signed up. And I'm excited to be here. You know, you hit it with the bio. I have helped talent find their way through their careers, find their way to work differently, whether it's remote or hybrid, find leadership positions and move all around the world. I haven't just done it professionally, I've done it personally. I'm originally from New York. Then I moved myself to Los Angeles. Then I moved to Seattle. Then I lived in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Then I came back to California to start my company. And as of January, I'm now finding my way back. I think I want to go back to Spain, but since I've spent just over a month in Athens, and then I went back to Barcelona. So now I'm rediscovering the individual visas that I know will get me there. And that's the thing about what we're talking about today is career. We all want to make moves. We might want to make changes in our lives, but the career is like the bloodline that does it, right? We have to feed ourselves. We have to figure that out. And I just want to help whoever I can make those changes when they want to. So I'm super excited to be here. And thank you everybody for joining us on a Monday.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. All right. So obviously, the subject of today's chat is mid-year check-ins, right? We're going to talk about adapting your career strategy to reach your goals. So to get us started here, let's talk about what that career strategy and what that maintenance looks like. How often do you think that we should be checking in on our career strategy to do a goal refresh?
It's a great question. It's a great start. Those of you who haven't done a chat with me before, you'll get used to me saying it depends. I don't think that people are products. I don't think our career should be productized. I don't think there's one right answer for everybody. And of course, everyone's advice is based on their own experience, personally and professionally. So just take that the way it comes, right? So overall, when you're talking about checking in with yourself in terms of your career, your job, or doing a refresh, let's take the check-in. My advice would be, you really want to check in at least quarterly. If the best you can do, because life is up and down and things are crazy, I totally get it, twice a year. You want to make note of what's going on, things that you're still enjoying, mistakes that you've made, things that you've learned that could potentially lead you to your next role that you might want to continue. You want to make note of the things that make you feel something, essentially. And that gets me to kind of this term goal refresh. I see two elements when we're talking about check-in. I see goals and I see priorities. Personally, I think priorities are what we want out of our life personally. To me, priorities are how you want to live your life, and those should come first. I think your goals could be maybe the title that you think you want, or the role, or maybe you want to go into management, or maybe you want to go from startup to corporate because you don't want to do 10 people's jobs. You want to do your own. You know, you want to kind of change things that are a bit more operational. That's what I see as a goal. And I think the goals are more long-term. To me, the most important thing that you want to note when you're doing a check-in is the priorities. Am I feeling good about my life the way it is? Am I managing my work stress well? Those are the things you really want to pay attention to. And I think it's important to distinguish between the two, depending on the type of culture you live in, some cultures, there's plenty of American culture where your whole life revolves around work. It took me a few times, but definitely when I hit my 40s, I was like, okay, I'm going to change this now. But I have to figure out how to break those habits, unlearn those habits, change that muscle memory so that my priorities for my life come first. And then my goals, my career feeds that, right? So if you can't do quarterly, which would be about 3 months, twice a year, I think is fine. If you can do it every month, great. Now let's talk about ongoing. Doesn't have to be every day unless if you're a product person and you like to have numbers and tasks and metrics, have at it. I don't care if you do it 5 times a day. It's completely up to you. But on an ongoing basis, you should be making notes when things hit you. So whether you're using tools or certain apps that are great, I like the Notes app. I'm a simple Mac girl. I use it on my phone on the fly, wherever I am. Oh, I thought, oh, that was great today. Let me make a note of that. You could use Evernote. You could use Google Docs, which are great because you could share them. If you like the idea of a whiteboard, you could use tools like Asana or Asana, depending on if you're into yoga or not, of how I pronounce it, depends on the day. Trello, Miro. Written is fine too. If you're old school, I mean, you'll see me look down. I'm full of notebook. I just put it in a blur, see? I like to write things down also. Whatever it is, you want to always have access to something so you can make notes along the way. Then when you do your routine check-in, whether it's, like I said, whether it's every month or every quarter, you go through your notes. It's much easier to go through the Notion's another good one. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Layla. Oh, it's Layla. Hi, Layla. Layla and I work together, and her husband Harvey. They're fantastic. She is an engineer that's going places. Everybody follow Layla and Harvey as well. Harvey's a brilliant engineer with a design brain. I'm telling you, these two. Back to it. So check-ins. I suggest every quarter. If you want to do it twice a year, fine. Give yourself a little bit of grace if things are crazy and you just don't even want to think about it, that's fine. But have a method, use a tool where on an ongoing basis, you can brain dump those notes as they happen, something you learned. And it could be good or bad. You could be working with someone and they handled something in a meeting or they had a reaction you didn't like. Maybe you make a note of not to do it that way. Maybe you make a note of something that was good. Maybe you make a note of something you heard and you're like, I don't know anything about that, but that's interesting. And then you reevaluate it on your routine check-in. So again, I think keep in mind too, outside of the routine, whenever your priorities change, whenever life throws something at you, right? I'm 46, I've had surgeries. I put my life on pause to help my mom when her partner passed. Things happen in life. You leave a job, things happen in life where you just have to pause and rethink about how you're going to live and what you want to do. When those things happen, you have to write down what you want. Just note it. You don't have to sit in it too long that it makes you upset, but you want to note it so that when you start looking at when you're ready to take action and look at your career strategy, you have the roadmap of where you want to go. Any questions in the chat? Did I miss anything? How about you, Megan?
Nothing so far, but as you're talking about this, it's like sparking something for me. It always happens on these chats, y'all. But like, does not matter how many times I talk to Kelly, I always have one of these moments where, you're talking about like the major things that happen, like, you have an illness in the family or whatever. And I'm thinking about it in terms of, I live with bipolar disorder. And so when I have like a major depressive arc, or if I have a major like episode of mania, it's not that always something happens as a result of that, but it's very disorienting. And now as I'm thinking about it, like that might be a good time for me to try and like, if I'm not sticking to my quarterly, that might also be something that for me at least would signify, okay, let's maybe reassess and see like if our priorities are still the same. Maybe, maybe the priority needs to shift to doing stuff that makes me less depressed. And so now my balance and all of the calculations I had for how I spend my time aren't going to add up anymore. So maybe now I need to reassess my career goals in light of what my body needs. So I love that idea of like, not just waiting for the quarterly, but also looking at it in terms of like something large that is impacting your life that would shuffle a bunch of other things.
Yeah. It's so important. I'm glad you brought that up too. That's another angle that that I didn't think about. So thank you for offering that. I'm sure many other people experience the same thing. I've had bouts with depression. Have there been times where I check out and watch Netflix and I don't really exist for a few days? 100%. And we have to give ourselves grace. We can't leave it up to other people. You have to give yourself space and make space for yourself whenever your body says it's time. And just do that. And that's what I mean, like by taking these notes ongoing and making it a brain dump. I'm going to age myself a little bit, even though I already told you I'm in my mid 40s. But there used to be this guy, Ron Popeil, who had all these infomercials on, and he had this rotisserie chicken machine. And he'd be like, put the chicken in, set it, and forget it. And it rings in my head when I mention this to people. Same with doing like a long resume, like just word vomit and brain dump things and get them out of your head. Save them for later. You'll have a library of things to sift through, and you won't be struggling to kind of think about it. You can just play with what's in front of you. I went to university to teach, and I work with little kids. We give them tactile objects. We give them magnets on a fridge of letters because they can move them around instead of sitting in your own head. So give those things to yourself. Just to kind of recap it, because I know we went a few minutes over on this one. I just want to rein us in a little bit. So the scenario to check in and adjust if needed. Number one, have your priorities changed? If yes, what are your priorities now? If the reason they changed was something difficult, you don't have to like sit in that. That's therapy time. But what do you want now? And start with yourself. Number two, have your goals changed? Maybe you still want the same job. You just have to find a different way to get there. Maybe you don't want it anymore. Maybe you've now been a people manager and you're like, which happened to me. I have had enough of your spreadsheets and your OKRs. Like you need to take them and go somewhere else. I've had enough. I'm not making you another presentation deck for your leadership team. It's enough. So whatever's hit you, have your goals changed? Number three, will your next career step and your long-term goals support your priorities? If you want more peace and you want to slow down and you want to work less, then chasing that VP next step that you know is going to be more, it might not line up. And number four, are you managing your work stress well? Is it the work or is it how you're managing it? Is it your productivity? What is really hitting you at that point? So those are the four areas that I just noted overall that I would use in a check-in. So have your priorities changed? If yes, what are they now? Have your goals changed? If yes, what are they now? Will your next career step and long-term goals support your priorities? Remember, your priority is yourself. That's why that comes first. And are you managing your work stress well? Are we having a moment or are we ready to say bye-bye and change direction? That's how I would frame those two.
I like this a lot. Sorry, I'm diving deep into the chat here because there's a ton of activity happening. There's a lot of people asking and kind of saying the same thing. Savannah says work-life balance. Thanks for touching on this and providing further insight on how to plan and strategize. That's where I struggle most right now. Julia had said, when things seem like they're falling apart, they may actually be falling together. I thought of this when you mentioned reevaluating things during difficult times or taking a pause. That's a really good point, right? Stuff has fallen apart in my life many times, as I'm sure has happened with all of you. And we just kind of got to keep going. So yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean, we're all realistic. It doesn't mean it's going to change tomorrow, but knowing that you want to change something, it'll change how you make decisions. It'll change what you hear when you're listening to people. It'll change who you surround yourself with. If you're surrounded by people that are doing something you don't want to do, then you'll start to pay attention to the people that are doing something else. I think I know Alva, if that's the Alva, I think it is. Thank you for adding the notes of the apps that I just listed in the chat. I see that. That's fantastic. I appreciate that. And I love that also, the other note about work-life balance. It means something different for everybody. If you want to go all in and build a business and work, and that's your goal, do it. Go for the money. Whatever you want to do at any stage in your life, have at it. You're the only one that has to face the consequences, really. So it really is up to you.
Yeah, of course. We have been getting some really great questions in the chat thread. I've been grabbing all of them. So I'm filtering them in at this point via, where they would fit in the other questions that Kelly knew we were going to ask today. But I will make sure that we prioritize the questions that have been asked in the chat as well. So thank you to y'all for submitting those. Please, please, please feel free to keep sending them in, especially if you want us to dive in deeper on something that Kelly has said. you need clarification, whatever, please feel free. Okay, so let's talk about where to start. If we're unsure where we want to go in our career, like, are there books or websites that you recommend to inspire that thinking? Where would you suggest people start?
It's a great question. There's two scenarios when you talk about where to start. And one of the things that I enjoy about doing what I'm doing, and what frustrated me, because I used to do this on my mobile outside the office and just talk to people for free because it bothered me. We don't have any education around these things and we don't have any help. And one of the things that's very important to me is it's not just okay to do this professionally and talk about it. You have to have done it yourself. You have to experience how it is quite difficult, and it's nuanced. It's personal for everybody. Career and job search is personal for the person, but it's transactional for a company. So there's nothing wrong with feeling it that way. And if you've never done it, you have to find your own rhythm of what makes sense for you. And you have to try a couple things before you get there. So with that said, in general, overall, there's two scenarios if you're thinking about your career strategy and how to do it for the first time. The first scenario is maybe you're doing it for the first time and you have no idea where to go after this first job. Maybe you came out of the recession, you took the job you could get. Maybe you took a job that you thought you wanted, but now you're in it and you're like, why is this my daily life? I don't understand what's happening here. Maybe you're in a job that you love and you're not quite sure where else you can go. So in that scenario number one, what you're looking to do with your career strategy is to map potential career paths and options. You're trying to map where you can go. In that scenario, one of the best things you can do, my analogies, you'll get used to them. This is window shopping. You're going to use LinkedIn and you're going to look at other people's profiles who are in a similar job to you, maybe 2 or 3 steps above, and you're going to see what they did before that. You're going to use other people as examples for what you could do and where you could go. You can also use the filter on LinkedIn to do a people search, and you can search for past companies. So let's say you 100% know that you'd want to work at one of the FANG companies, right? Facebook, or Meta, Amazon. I have to do that every time I say it. It's just funny to me. Amazon, Netflix, Google, what have you. They all swim in the same circles, right? You're talking about the same pool of people. So if you find someone at one, the background will be similar to another. Find someone with your job title, see what else they've done. So you're looking for options in terms of people, right? Mm-hmm. The second one is you have a target goal. You know the job that you want eventually, but you don't really know how to get there. In that case, you're going to do a people search on LinkedIn for people who are in the job that you want 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 2 years from now, and you're going to look at what they did before that. You're going to look at the roles that they did. You're also going to look at the companies they worked for. You're going to look at the skills that they display. Doing it on your own can take a little bit more legwork. If you work with a career coach like me, or if you work with someone else who has broad experience in recruitment in multiple roles in multiple industries, they'll be able to tell you more which paths you can find. But that's where it starts. So you're either looking to figure out options of where you can go, or you're either trying to figure out how you can get to exactly where you want to go. That's the first thing you have to figure out. And then after that, you can use tools like job posts in addition to people profiles to see what you need to add to what you're doing or what makes sense for you. You can also ask people they're in the roles. We'll get to referrals and introductions. I think we have a few questions to go, but we'll get to that.
Oh yeah, referrals and introductions is something Kelly specializes in. There's an entire separate video on it. I'll try and grab it for you. It's honestly one of the ones that I recommend and send out to people more than probably any other past chats I've sat on, just because it does cover a ton of stuff that is incredibly murky that we are never explained, literally anywhere you go. So I think that's really very important stuff to talk about. Okay, before we leave this area where we're trying to think in terms of those career goals, what do you think is the best way to inquire about work-life balance if you think that might be something that is a huge factor within wherever you think you want your career goals to go? So like if we're thinking in terms of work-life balance and you're investigating like your career might diverge from where you are currently, is there a way to talk about that with people before you know what I mean? It's one of those things that like, do you want to ask that in the interview, or how would you, is this something that we should be thinking about when we're creating the goals before we get to the interview stage?
I think it can be both. You know, when you're creating your goals, you're creating your priorities. Not to sound like, you know, a life coach somewhere, but it is kind of like a vision board. You know, you have a target in mind, and those targets of goals could be money, could be location, could be I want to work async hours where we only cross over 4 hours a day, and I don't have to be online and connected to my team 8 hours a day. It really is your preference, and then you reverse engineer from there. And the reason why I think that's so important is because traditionally, when it comes to job search, we don't do that. We look at the job posts and we figure out where can we fit in, instead of starting with what we want to do so that we understand where we belong. And then we can decide where we're willing to compromise. You might not get everything, but if you start with what you want and what you don't want, you can have a bit more control on the compromise. I think it's totally fine to ask these questions in an interview. I do a lot of interview prep and, more importantly, practice. It's one thing to study for an interview, know who you're talking to, know your own career stories. It's another thing to adapt those career stories to the audience you're speaking to, recruiter, hiring manager, case study pitch, different audiences, and tailor it to the company you're talking to. As you're doing that, you can use examples from your own career that are positive. We don't want to complain. We don't want to be like, I don't want to be online for more than 4 hours a day. That's not how we're walking into the interview. But we can frame questions the same way that interviewers frame for candidates, so you can suss out what's going on. You can also do that in a performance review or a meeting with your manager or during an onboarding process. Those questions usually, I think, are great for like future team members, because usually they'll tell you, nah, they say that, but yeah, unlimited PTO, we all take like a week a year, 2 weeks a year.
Right? Oh, we're terrible about it.
You don't really necessarily have to ask that outright. I'm not a fan of like the top 10 interview questions you have to ask. Again, my opinion. I'm not a fan of ending an interview. Now we're on interviewing. I'm not a fan of ending an interview by saying, what reservations do you have about me? Like, sure, let me wrap this conversation up by having you repeat the negative part of it and leave that. Like, imagine going on a date with someone and say, what do you find gross about me? Like, I don't understand it.
That's
but
like,
you frame the
like
question.
An after action report. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Once you get the rejection, okay, where could I do better so that,
yes.
You know, next time, what would have made me a more appealing candidate? That's fine. Right. And that's proactive. That's not, let me be the last taste in your mouth that leaves you, is the things that I didn't want you to really remember from this interaction. Yeah.
So let's give an example that everybody can kind of hold on to, right? We're talking about work-life balance. So let's say it is an interview, or let's say you're new on a team, or you have a new manager, right? Use their interview tactics against them. It's so nice to meet you, Meg. I'm really excited to learn more about the team. And I'm glad we have time for me to ask questions today. Can you tell me about a time, or can you give me an example of when someone on the team had, let's say, a family emergency or something personal, they had to unexpectedly change their schedule? How did the team cover for them? How did the team manage their work or help them communicate with everyone else? So you're not saying,
time, y'all.
I don't want to be on the clock 8 hours a day, but you're asking them for an actual example of how the team handled that. You're assuming that that's part of their daily practice. If they don't have an answer, flags up. They either don't pay attention, or
there's no support. Kind of, you're expected to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's the American cliche of, okay, I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to have a surgery for about 45 minutes. The anesthesia will wear off after that, and I'll be right back on the chat, right? Mm-hmm. So that's how you frame the question.
Yeah.
When I do interview prep and practice with people, or we're preparing for those kind of conversations, we start with their brain dump. Again, basic brain dump word vomit of, this is what I'm worried about. And then we craft an example so you can ask the person how they would deal with that type of scenario, but not in a way where
you're not saying like,
you're not giving an ultimatum or declaring it.
Yeah. You know, that way it doesn't put you in the position of having to say like, hey, like having to disclose, like if you have a chronic illness and you don't want, you know, you don't need to talk about that. Legally, they shouldn't ask you. So, you know, I like this idea of identify what you're actually worried about or the information you want, and then work backwards from there to figure out a way to ask it, you know, in a way that is more advantageous to you. I love
Yeah.
that wording of like if what's an example of something that happened on your team and somebody needed to be covered for, what did that look like within the team? I love
The
that because it
example is
does
key. Yeah, you're asking for a solution. You're asking about how they work through something. If their answer is we have great work-life balance, what does that mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't really help. If people want to
Well,
be social, if they're in the office, how often do you guys get together outside of work?
mhm.
Things like that.
Julia chimed in saying, I was repeatedly told by my last manager that I wasn't promoted once over the course of 8 years while watching her be promoted multiple times because I had work-life balance and boundaries. I didn't work outside of work hours often enough, even though I worked incredibly hard in my role day in, day out all through those years. And I think this is something we are seeing, right? Is people realizing that just because most employers seem to want the 40, like the employee they pay 40 hours a week, but get 60 hours of work out of.
Mm-hmm.
So what? They're paying you to be there. You're there when you need to be there. And I think there are a lot more people that are talking about this and how it's kind of garbage that, working 40 hours a week doesn't ever actually mean working 40 hours. So I do like this assertion and this recognition of the fact that like, okay, yeah, I had boundaries. I worked when I was being paid to work. How dare I do that? Like,
yeah,
I like that that the conversation is shifting towards this and that like more people are talking in these terms. So,
and that's
yeah.
a leadership problem. That's a leadership problem of, just because someone had a good idea and they talked a good game to pitch and got a few $1 million worth of money to start a business doesn't mean they can run a company and doesn't mean they can manage people. It's a false equivalency. And it also doesn't mean that they know how to set productivity limits that are reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't need to be due in 2 days, then give them a week. Like if that's another good question. How do you set deadlines in productivity? If someone says to you, if you're in a situation and they say, great, how soon can you get this to me? My advice to you is to say, you know what, let me take a look at my workload and I'll get back to you. And really think about it. If you say, I could probably get it to you by, early next week, I have these few things to take care of. And they say, well, I need it sooner. And say, all right, well, which one of these things do you want me to let slide back?
Yeah.
There has to be a bit of pushback for us to kind of get there. Something I've been doing for years, of course, not with my clients now that I have my own business, but when I was at companies, is I would block my calendar. I don't want to talk to you before 10 a.m. If you really need me, you'll message me on the side. And I'll still be like, that doesn't really work for me. Do you really need to talk to me at 9? Is there another time we can find? So you can add little bits of control. I love the way we go all over the place, but I am looking at the clock.
Yeah, we are all over the place with this conversation. All right, I'm grabbing links for y'all to past Allora Collective videos, so that way you can take a look, because you're right, we do go all over with this, but there are videos that specifically kind of dial in and dig in deeper on some of this stuff. Okay, so do we want to go over like the idea of like how to organize or like create a framework for your career transition, or do you think we've mostly covered that with the previous couple questions?
I think we mostly did it, but I have a summary of a couple of points for it that I can run through pretty quick. Let's just cover that to make sure we hit on that, and then we'll move on to our next grouping.
Yeah. So if people in the audience have never created a job strategy, is there a structure to follow? Is there a framework that is, the easiest? Like, what do you recommend if people have never set pen to paper about this?
So we had a couple of questions. We get questions about job search strategy, and then we also get questions about career strategy, which I think are two different things. Career strategy is more in the long term where you want to end up. Job strategy or job search strategy is usually about the job that you want next or how to find your next job. So defining really what you need is most important. Again, it's two scenarios. You either want to map potential career paths to understand your options, or you have a target, a long-term goal, and you need to map how to get there. So we're going back into job strategy, career strategy. I'm going to add a little bit of job search into that. Number one, know your priorities versus your goals. We covered that before. Number two, organize your operations. Get the house in order. Do you need to send outbound messages, and to who? Do you need to have a target company list so you can ask people that work there what it's like and what the difference is? Do you need to check certain job boards that are maybe more curated for what you're looking to do? It could be remote work. It could be a more diverse and inclusive environment. It could be a mission-driven company. You have to define what you're looking for and then figure out what you need to do in order to get there. And then you want to automate as much as possible. So if you're going to be sending outbound messages to ask people questions, create as many templates as you can. Have a 1 to 3 sentence summary about who you are and what you're looking to do. And then you only have to change 1 or 2 sentences every time you send the message. You just copy and paste the rest. You can also automate using your calendar and check-ins. Set repeating calendar events. I love them. Set it to repeat as often as you need it to. So again, set it and forget it. The less you have to remember, the better. Then while you're managing your outbound activity, you want to start looking at, let's say, maybe you have some old interview prep notes or you're keeping them active, which is good. You're using either STAR, which we all know, to frame your career stories: situation, task, action, result. Or another one that is good, SBI, situation, behavior, impact. Start looking at them and tailoring them to the things you want to do next. So this is what you accomplished. How does that make you a candidate, or how does that connect you to the job that you want next? And then start practicing how you pitch it. You could talk to yourself, you could talk to a friend, you could hire a coach, but you have to practice how you do it, how you talk about it, and how you frame the story. And then the most important piece with any of this is keep going. You're allowed to slow down. You're allowed to take a break. Anytime you need it, give yourself the grace we talked about before, but you have to keep going. If you want to create any change, change will come at you. We can't avoid it. But if you feel stuck or you know you want to make a change, you have to keep going at whatever pace you can do until you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are getting some great questions in the chat thread. We're going to try and get to as many of them as we can.
The chat is on fire.
Oh, it's insane over here, y'all. Seriously. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next question in my list, let's talk long-term planning. Now, none of us has a crystal ball. If any of us did, oh my God, life would be sweet, wouldn't it? But if we're trying to look into the future, how do you factor things like layoffs? We've been seeing stuff like this happen. I know that like, you know, industry trends or market and economic trends are pointing towards another recession. When we're thinking about these things, how do you factor something like layoffs that probably might happen in the future, but you have no way of controlling that?
Here's why I take a breath before I answer this question. If you haven't been caught in a layoff, I really don't know anyone that has. Let me rephrase that. It's kind of like if we would talk about like a little black dress, everybody has one, or a black suit or a white t-shirt, let's say, you know, whatever the thing that everyone's gone through. Layoffs are something that happen and will happen and may happen again, and they're completely out of our control. It's not being fired. It's different than resigning. So if you're in a market and you're concerned with layoffs, my best advice is to pay attention to your network. Pay attention that if a layoff happened and you would want to go to a competitor company, do you already know someone that works there that you can ask for a referral? If you don't, connect with someone there. So I would kind of think about layoffs in the sense of almost like hedging your bet, right? We hope for the best. We don't want anyone to get laid off, but expect that at one point in your career, if it hasn't been already, it will. I know people that got laid off, took a new job, got laid off again, took a new job and got laid off again. And I'm talking about back in the recession of 2008 to 2010. So now we're having it again. If we look at the US itself, unemployment is low. Our numbers are pretty good overall, but in tech specifically got hit with the layoffs. So it really depends on where it's coming from. When people say factor in, the only thing I would say is just be ready to go if it hits. And if they offer you severance, talk to someone who knows, who's been through it, or book a free session with me or book some coaching sessions, and let's talk about the plan that you're going to get from it. You know, be smart with your personal financial situation, or do the best that you can. I shouldn't say be smart. I'd say do the best that you can in managing that.
Yeah.
I hope that answers the question. If someone has a specific situation, we offer, you know, free 20-minute sessions. You can book one with me or any of my coaches, and we're happy to answer it. But if it's a specific situation, it's better off talked about one-on-one. But other than that, assume eventually it might happen. So try to bet against it. Keep your network alive. Make your ongoing notes of the things you're doing so you're prepared for an interview. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see where else we've had questions here. Okay. Let's talk about if we're doing our mid-year check-in, right? We're going to reassess our goals.
Mm-hmm.
Does any of your advice change if you are in the middle of a pivot to a new career, especially coming from like something that's established? You're not like 2 years here, this isn't working, I'm going to pivot. Like, let's talk about like you've been in something for a while and now you are pivoting to something completely new. Does any of the advice for these check-ins change?
I love pivots. I think I'm on my fourth. I don't, unless someone's maybe like they're a doctor or I don't know, maybe like a civil engineer or, a corporate lawyer or an architect. A lot of us are going to change careers and have pivots. Most people, especially since the recession of 2010, which I know is a long time ago, but most people these days, they're changing careers every 1.5 to 3 years. That's an average. You're not staying 5 to 10. And it's important to give yourself a little bit of room to figure out what you want to do and what you enjoy. And it's also a good thing to think about how you want to work and who you want to work with. So here's how I would do an assessment if you're exploring a career pivot, okay? My analogy is similar to when you're reorganizing a room or a closet or something like that. You have a keep pile, you have a donate pile, and you have a trash pile. Your keep pile are the things that, and I have my notes to make sure I get it for you. The keep pile is the part of your job that you really like. And notice I didn't say the part that you're really good at, because there were a lot of things I was really good at, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I enjoyed other things. So I kind of worked on getting better at things I enjoyed. Your keep pile is the things that you enjoy, that you want to keep as part of your daily life and as part of your career. Your donate are the transitional skills or experience that will help you bridge to a new role. Things that you can keep doing, but they'll connect you to something else. And then the trash is the stuff you don't want to do anymore. Okay? Is it always going to be perfect? No. Maybe you'll have a little bit of trash in the next one, but you want to try to eliminate it and mark it off. So for me personally, I was like, I don't want to work in corporate anymore. I don't want to work in an office with people that are wearing a suit and tie. It wasn't for me. I don't want 8 a.m. meetings and, referring to people by their initials. It just wasn't for me. Everybody's different. You have to decide what's good for you. When you think about the donate pile, that is the most important pile. If you have the means financially or otherwise to completely start over, leave everything that you've done, learn a new skill, go to a boot camp, become a designer, an engineer, whatever you want, have at it. Most of us can't do that. We need some kind of leverage. So here's an example of leverage. When I built the job search program for General Assembly, we had our first location in Los Angeles. So I had to build it from nothing. I had people that left, let's say, architecture and then wanted to become a developer. So the donate or the transitional skill was her industry knowledge of architecture, of real estate, of development. So her target company lists were in that industry. So she might be new or pivoting in the skill, but her industry knowledge made her a better candidate than other people that never touched it before. You could do that in any area. Maybe you have product knowledge, maybe you have location knowledge, maybe it's remote work. If you're switching careers, there should be something that makes you stand out as a candidate, which is that donate section, those transferable skills or your experience that makes you stand out from everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. We did get a question just now, or coming in from Brittany Williams. I keep reading LinkedIn posts that don't advise on career pivots right now, given the current situation. I'm also one to do career pivots, and reading these posts has been discouraging. Do you agree with this for the tech industry right now? Is it better to hold off on trying to pivot right now? I know next to nothing, but I sit and marinate in these chats all the time. So I have an idea, but I want to know what the expert says.
I've been on LinkedIn since the very beginning. I limit my time on it now. There's a lot of posts I don't want to read either. And there's people posting top tips who have never been in recruiting or talent and have had maybe one job and stayed in the same career track and never worked at 3 different companies in 2 different countries on different continents. So you got to consider who's giving you the advice and their experience. And I think the key word, and I'm glad Brittany wrote it, is try. What in the world do you have to lose by trying? If it works, who cares? You didn't lose anything.
And if it doesn't,
if it doesn't work, and that's what I mean. If it doesn't work and you tried, then all right, maybe you have interview prep for the next time you try it, or maybe it'll take longer than you thought. But if you try it, it works out, and you happen to have a strong network where someone says, listen, you should talk to them, and it works out, great. If it doesn't, it's preparing you for something that will come and it will work. And I see you, Julia. If LinkedIn is overwhelming, leave.
Yeah.
I will log into LinkedIn and I will not read the news feed. Everybody's entitled, the same. But if I know that if I know you were caught in a layoff and your severance was extremely healthy, and there's a very long post about how dare this happen, but I know that there was a very healthy package given out, I don't want to read it, because I'll work with people that didn't get that.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's bothering you, don't read it. Dig into searching and using LinkedIn for what it's for. Do people searches, do job searches, map your network, people you know, go into groups and find people you know. Stop reading the feed.
Literally anybody can post whatever they want there, right? It's basically Facebook with a somewhat professional bend to it. So think of it, I try to think of it in those terms, right? You go in, you get what you need, but the articles and all of these things that they post and repost and, different opinions and whatever, it's to keep you on the page, right? And so if you're getting distracted with all of this other stuff in addition to your job search, they know that basically they've got you, right? You're going to search there, even if you're also doing like Monster or Glassdoor or whatever. So I think that you make a really good point, which is like, they just want eyeballs on the screen. Like, so if this is something, there's going to be somebody that'll say whatever they want to be hearing. Like my grandmother used to say, you can hear anything you're listening for. So if you are somewhat unsure and what you're hearing is maybe not right now, it's not to say that maybe not right now is not factual and the best option for you. But you're never going to know that because hindsight is 2020, not forethought. And if you don't do it, the answer is going to be exactly what it is right now. Trying to pivot in the middle of a turn is not the worst thing. Neither is trying to pivot when it's the big boom and you are just starting and everybody else seems to be already, further along this pivot hill than you are. So I do think
and if you're working through it, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, please go right ahead.
I was going to say, if you're working through it, none of this counts unless you have an offer and there's an offer accepted and you have a start date and you cleared a background check. So what are we talking about here? You're adding people to your network. You're having conversations. Just think of it as research. Instead of think of it as trying and you don't know if it'll work out, just think of it as research.
Yeah. Okay.
And do it at your own pace.
So in this same vein, if we are trying to assess, if we want to make a pivot or whatever, are there different tips that you have for assessing whether or not we are ready to level up? If you are ready to ascend the ladder, if you're ready for more responsibility, what should we be thinking of if we're trying to assess this for ourselves?
I think it goes back to our very first question, or the first thing I said was really, what are your priorities of how you want your work life to be and how you want your life to be? So when you say level up, if you're talking about a vertical promotion, what does that mean? Do you actually want to manage people and do performance reviews? Or do you want to take an individual contributor route and go toward a principal role or a staff role where you're not in charge of performance reviews, but the scope of your work could be org-wide and affect the whole company? There are different tracks now that are available for people that weren't available many years ago. Many years ago, people wanted to level up and get a promotion so they can make more money. How many people here, we don't have to do a show of hands, but probably all except one job that I left because of poor management or poor leadership.
Yep.
Not everybody belongs in that role. But we chased it because it was the only way to make more money. That's not the case anymore. Yeah. So sometimes it's a lateral move. Sometimes it's a change in the scope of your work. Sometimes it's a track, whether it's vertical or lateral. You again have to go around. You have to go back to what you want your daily life to look like. If it's only about money, then have at it and just be prepared for what that means.
Yeah, I like this. Okay, so this person wanted to know what your next step should be once you identify your areas of improvement. All right, so you've decided what things you want to improve on. Your goals are to get better at those things. What what do you think should be the next step after that?
Okay. I know we're a little behind because we took a couple turns, so I'm going to try to burn through the next day. I promise you guys, I'm going on pace. And if I talk too fast, you'll get the recording and you can always ask me in a free session or something.
And
I
Mary's
love
in
this
here like,
question.
Yes.
I know people are copying the notes and sharing it with everybody. It's like having a little, what's that person in the courtroom that does that? Anyway, okay,
stenographer.
We're distracted. Stenographer. I love this question because areas of improvement to me means growth. If you're paying attention and you want to improve things, it means you're ready to grow. And that's the most important thing. Later on, we had a couple of questions about motivation. I don't think anyone can give you that. I don't think you should be waiting for your company or your team or your boss to tell you where you should improve. I think you should take the initiative and decide where you want to grow and what you want to reach for. So if you're thinking about where you want to improve and you have an idea of what you want to do next or what you want to do in the future, try to connect those dots. If for your next role, you have to have advanced skills or be better at this or do more of this, then do that. If you've gotten feedback, which we all get feedback, which again is just someone's opinion, by the way. And don't get me started with anonymous performance reviews, which to me is like obligatory therapy by someone who is not qualified at all. So we can talk about where those should sit in the corner somewhere. But you're really just thinking about where you want to go and where you want to focus on. If you want to improve things because you want to be a better leader, then that doesn't always mean learning how to be a manager, because like I said before, you could be a leader as an individual contributor and a principal. Maybe being a leader for you means lead by example. So how can I demonstrate the things that I know work? And also look at the people around you. If there's someone at work that you admire, if they handle a meeting really well, if you feel good when you talk to them and you seem to feel like you learn something every time they talk, think about that and improving that as a skill for yourself.
Loving this. I'm loving all of this. Sorry, I'm like trying to make sure that I'm like keeping on top of the chat because people are still firing over in there. I'm absolutely loving this. Okay. Do you suggest hiring a coach or a consultant to help with reaching these goals? Obviously this is something that you do professionally.
Yes, of course I suggest hiring a coach.
Yeah. Do you think it's something that's required?
I don't think it's required. I think it's different for everybody. The reason why I set up Allora Collective as a team is because I don't think everyone needs the same thing. I also don't think the timing of having a coach is the same for everyone. So for example, my team and I focus on helping people take action to move forward in whatever direction they're looking to go and at their pace. We're not life coaches. We're not therapists. It's a different line. We also combine, for example, one of my coaches, Anina, she's more of a design specialist, but she's not from recruitment and talent acquisition. So she serves more with a hiring manager's perspective. So if I'm working with a client who works in design, even though I've recruited many of them and I understand it, I will help them with interview prep for the recruiter. I will help them with job offer, job search. She will do a deep dive and do a portfolio review. So everybody has their place. The most important thing about hiring a coach, which I feel like I get stuck in this all the time. In the beginning of my career, I was in creative and they were like, it's sales. And I hated being attached to sales. And then with recruiting and agency, they were like, oh, it's another recruiter. And career coach has kind of gotten that little stigma. But at the end of the day, I help people change their lives and feel better. Like at the end of the day, that's what we do. If you're looking for someone to help you, qualify them. Look at their testimonials. Look at the number of years they've worked. Have they worked in different positions? Are they adaptable? Have they worked with leadership and different levels of people? Have they worked across discipline? Have they worked with engineers and product and design? Do they understand the different ways people think? Have they worked remotely? If they haven't done it personally and professionally, I think they're lacking in the empathy that is so important when you're looking for specifically a career coach. Because if you talk to someone and they tell you it's one size fits all, and here's my 10 steps in my course that you can pay $300 for, and I'll talk to you maybe one time, I don't think it works that way. Mm-hmm. It should be adapted to the way each customer learns best. It's the old teaching method. You should not be teaching everyone the same way. You should understand how someone learns best and then adapt the knowledge you're delivering or the support that you're giving to them. So qualify them. Look at their testimonials. Ask them if you can message someone they worked with. look at their background and the years that they've done it. And if it seems too easy and they're just telling you that everyone they work with gets their dream job in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I really don't know. I don't know what planet that is. I don't.
I mean, share it with the rest
that's
of
my
us,
thought.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like anyone can map hard skills, like software you use or certifications, that's like a recruiter interview or your resume. It qualifies you for the role. But when it comes to the art of helping someone talk about themselves, whether they're comfortable at it or not, being able to play the audience. So when I do interview practice and prep, I know the company and I know the interview stage. If my client is going to talk to a hiring manager who's a leadership level versus maybe more of like a peer, I'm completely playing a different role in the interview. I'm listening for different things. And it's important that you talk to someone that's going to be invested in you. The other thing about career coaching, the reason why our plans are flexible, we have a single session, then we have a 1 month and a 3 month, is because if someone tells you you have to do 100 interviews over the course of 6 months and then you'll do this, it's not one size fits all, and it also doesn't leave space for life to get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
I have clients that'll work with me for a month or 3 months and then they disappear for a bit. They're adjusting to something else. They started a new job. We just did their onboarding. They're good. I'll talk to you in a bit.
Well, and that's how life goes, right? It does this. It ebbs and flows. There's waves where certain things kind of take over and swamp everything else. And then there'll be periods where nothing's happening at all and everything should have happened, or it would be nice to have it spaced better. But you're right. It really does make a ton of sense to recognize that this is not going to be, it's not necessarily going to be something that you can just go nose to the grindstone for 2 weeks and have solved. I think it's really important to recognize that. And I love what you had said about who you're asking for feedback. This is something that I try to remember a lot, is that like, I try not to take advice from somebody if I would not trade places with them. Do I think that they're running their life seemingly great? Okay, awesome. So like, I keep that in mind when it comes to feedback professionally as well. Like, I'll ask for help from, or ask for feedback from my supervisor, but I'm also not going to ask for feedback from, one of my coworkers on my performance in this kind of setting. You know what I mean? Like it's not the person that they are. So, thinking about thinking about things in that way is like, I'll get feedback from my husband, but he doesn't work with me. So you do have to think about these terms of like who you're asking, so that you are setting yourself up or setting the stage for useful information, as opposed to someone just blowing smoke up you. So, yeah.
Yeah. And life is not an Instagram picture. It's messy. Job search doesn't feel great. It feels personal to us, but it's transactional for the company. Pivoting is scary. I encourage people, if you have 60% of the job or more and there's room to learn, you should go for that job. When you get in the seat, you figure it out. Most of these people in these big roles, they're Googling things every day, but it's important to work with someone that you can lean on in those moments. You should not be working with someone that says they've never been laid off.
Yeah.
If you haven't been able to find a job and you're struggling for 3 months, 6 months, or a year, you shouldn't be working with a coach who didn't experience that, or didn't experience the 2008 to 2010 recession like I did. That was my first stint in formal agency staffing, where people got laid off 1,000 at a time. They didn't get severance, and they didn't get RSUs or stock. They were literally called into the office on that day and said, "Today's your last day."
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, this is America, so we don't have to give you an extra paycheck.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that someone has the context to be patient with you and go at your pace. If my client is struggling and it's been a bit rough, I'm the first one to say, "Did you take a break this week? Where in your calendar are you taking breaks? You can't keep doing this 8 hours a day."
Mm-hmm.
So you want someone that's looking out for you along the way. I know we have 2 minutes, but I think we're up to motivation, if I'm not mistaken. And I would love to touch on that if we can squeeze it in. I'll drop my links in the chat for everybody.
Yes, I'll drop links in the chat for everybody as well. If we do run a little long and y'all have to bounce, apologies, totally understandable, but I obviously won't cut you off. So let's talk about motivation. You touched on this earlier with the idea that, nobody can give it to you. And personally, we had another question about accountability, and I see these as two different things. So let's talk about the motivation aspect. Where should we be looking for this motivation? If we don't have the support from our org, how do we make sure that we are keeping ourselves accountable and keeping the goal in mind for ourselves?
I agree with you. And I think we touched on this earlier, or it may have been before we started the chat. I think that motivation is a personal thing. I don't think it's anyone else's job to motivate me. It goes to self-discipline, and everybody will be motivated in different ways. If I need to shut down and take a rest, and I do it sometimes, whether I'm looking at Netflix or whether I'm watching just some reality TV and binging it, that's what I'm going to do. Which probably after an event like this, I'm going to be quiet for a little bit because I need a minute. But I have tools in place because I have reminders that I save that keep me motivated. For example, I read the testimonials all the time on my website. I save emails from people. I have emails from people from 10 years ago, or even when I first got to General Assembly, when I worked with the first group of graduates, I still have emails and screenshots saved of people that said, "You really helped me and I love my job. Thank you so much." You have to save reminders of why you're doing things. You can save them anywhere you want. You can put a picture of your kid on your monitor when you're doing your work, but you need reminders of why you're still in the fight, and you have to stay in the fight. You have to fight. Some people fight for their own success. Some people fight for happiness. I'm fighting for my own peace. If it starts to get me like this, except right now I'm just leaning forward because I'm excited about the chat. But if I notice myself getting like this, I stop and I just make space for myself. What motivates me are those small things, and everybody is different. It motivates me to know that I helped someone. It motivates me when I remember that even when I went to university to teach, because I wanted to work with the little kids and have my own preschool and daycare. It's a whole other sidebar story. But the things that I do now remind me of that. I still remember how I felt when I showed, a young kid how to tie their shoes, and then I was in the corner and I saw them do it across the room. It makes me feel good. It's a reminder when I remember that one of my students, when I first got to General Assembly, after I helped him get his first software developer job, now he's a CTO, and I helped him negotiate that. Whatever motivates you or gives you peace and makes you want to keep going, that's what you have to do. And it's really nobody's business what it is. Keeping yourself accountable, try to make it as easy as you can. I automate my calendar so that once I set it and it repeats, I don't have to think about it anymore. I can have space to write in my notebook and think about new ways I can help people or new products or other things. And I also keep space to learn new things because that motivates me. Not from career coaches with like top 10 lists and things like that, but I like learning about other things. After living internationally, I now have friends in other countries. I like learning about how other countries do things. I love reading about the school system in Finland and how they approach education. So whatever it is for you that keeps you interested, it doesn't matter what it is. You could work out, you could cook, you could sit and twiddle your thumbs and do nothing. Whatever it is that keeps you in the fight and it makes you want to keep going, to me, that's motivation.
You're right. This is something that we talked about like very early on, probably before the event started today. And you're right. It is one of those things where it's like, if you're not motivated, why is that? Are you maybe in the wrong situation? Are you maybe going towards the wrong goal? Are you, what's going on here, that if this is something that you think that you've set a goal that you want to work for, why is it not something that you want to work for? So yeah, I like that.
And you can always change things.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's
why. It might not happen as fast as you want, but even when you feel stuck, you can change something.
Yeah.
So just hold on to that, and eventually you'd be able to figure it out. It sucks for all of us. I tell sob stories all day long.
Yeah.
This is 46 years of, gray hair. It takes a lot of pain and screaming and doing things wrong and making mistakes and being like, I can't believe this doesn't work. I totally failed and I messed this up, to get to a place where you're like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to try this again. And everybody's got their own stuff. Just give yourself a minute.
Yeah. Yes. Oof. All right. Okay. We are going to have to round out. However, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who attended today. Apologies if you had to jump early, but the recording will be full, so you'll still get to see the whole thing. And I just want to say a big, big thank you to our audience members. Y'all took an hour and 4 minutes out of your day to do something positive for yourself in your career. That is not an easy thing to do. So congratulations, pat yourselves on the back, give yourself a star or a cookie or whatever your treat is. But also, I just want to say thank you to all of you. Obviously, these events don't happen without you. I don't have a job without you, but I want to tell you that like we are very grateful that in all of the options that you have for stuff like this, you choose to spend time with Power to Fly and amazing people like Kelly from Allora Collective. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Kelly, you know I love you. Thank you so much. I love getting to talk with you, and can't wait till we do this again.
Same. Megan, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that joined us from all over the world and all over the country. You know, we appreciate your time as much as you appreciate ours. If we didn't get to your questions, you can book a free session with me or anyone on my team if you want 20 minutes of one-on-one time, or if you have questions about working with us or with me. And like Meg said originally, keep a lookout on your inbox. I know Power to Fly is going to email all of you the recording so you can watch it. And also keep an eye on your inbox because I'm going to email you from contact@alloracollective.com. I'll repeat the link to the recording, and I'll also send you a discount for our services because we just launched our first download kit, which is the resume kit. There's a job search kit and an interview kit coming, and all of our kits are going to come with coaching sessions as well, so you can tailor it to yourself. But I'm just really excited for all of you. Like, think about your careers and what you want. Even if you can't have it right now, you have every right to want what you want. You just got to figure out a few steps to get there and just make it better. Like Obama used to say that, and he walked into a mess, and you know, I love him and I don't care who doesn't, but he was fantastic. I didn't agree with everything, but he would tell his team, better is good. Mm-hmm. It's never going to be perfect. That whole dream job thingy, I don't know about that, but I know that things can be better. So think about your career, give yourself time to reflect on it. It doesn't mean you have to change it right now, but if you do those little steps, make those little notes, acknowledge yourself of like what you're thinking about and what you want, you'll get there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I have nothing else I can add to that that's gonna top it. So thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you so much again to all of our attendees. I hope y'all have a fabulous rest of your Monday, and I hope that we will see you again back here soon. Until then, bye y'all.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Meg.